feel like Kobe in the fourth quarter.
This is the Dane Moore NBA podcast, brought to you by Prize Picks, coming at you Thursday afternoon. It's March 6th after the Wolves' 125-110 win over the Charlotte Hornets on Wednesday night, a game where Jaden McDaniels tied Anthony Edwards to lead the team in scoring with 29, a game where Julius Randle nearly had a triple-double, 25, 10, and 9, a game where Nas Reed had a double-double, led the team in plus-minus, and a game where DiVincenzo again made 4 of his 5 3-point attempts. He's now made 23 of 41 threes in the 5 games since returning from injury. That's 56% from deep. Yes, it was Charlotte last night. They are not good, but I do think there's some signals from that game, or at least some trend lines that continued from recent games in there. I've got Britt Robson here with me today to get into that game and just sort of the direction this team is moving. Hi, Britt. I mean, we just talked for a second before. This is like the longest I think you and I have gone without like seeing each other in person.
Yeah, for a while, right? That's right, because you had to skip the game the other night because of illness. I know you watched it on TV, but you had to skip being at courtside. So,
did anybody take my seat?
No, it was wonderful. Zagoda and I both had elbow room.
There you go. Well, let's start just by talking about, I kind of think the obviously the lead story from last night, which was Jaden McDaniels, again, 29, 10, and 4. And, it was, we talk about this, they're guarding him with Mark Williams. That kind of empowers Jaden to get going to his offensive game earlier. But I don't want to just focus on that game because
exactly, it's a continuation,
right? It's that wasn't a flash in the pan. I was just looking it up. Since January 30th, that game against Utah that Randle got hurt in, there's been 16 games since then. Randle misses 13, now he's been back for the last 3, but in those 16 games as a whole, Jaden is averaging 19 points, 8 rebounds, 3 assists, 1.5 steals, and a block in 37 minutes per game, while only shooting 32% from 3 on 4.5 3-point attempts per game, which is actually worse 3-point shooting than he was doing on almost the exact same volume, or per minute volume prior to getting hurt. I mean, what I want to talk to you about is how it looks and how it's different. I mean, this is a full stylistic shift, which we've talked about over the course of the last month, but there was certainly a lot of question surrounding, what was Jaden going to be able to, what was he going to continue to do or be able to continue to do once DiVincenzo and Randle returned. I mean, honestly, I thought it would be a dip. I thought we'd see the usage go back down, and that hasn't been the case. What looks most different to you about this? I don't know if we want to Jaden McDaniels 2.0 or 3.0 or wherever we're at in the Jaden progression. What looks different to you?
The deference from his teammates, the idea that he clearly has proven himself. I really do get the impression that he's incredibly quiet and mum with us. He's exceedingly popular person among his teammates. The effort he puts in, we saw it when he was a wing stopper. It's just extraordinary amount of work he puts into the game. And I think he has a really high level of respect from his teammates, beginning with Ant. But I think that what I just recently did a mailbag, and the first answer to that was there was a couple of questions about McDaniels, specifically McDaniels as a Rudy replacement someday or Rudy replacement soon, depending on which question you wanted to address. But what I did, and it was very convenient, he's played every game, so it's easy to make this happen. The Wolves have played 32 games in 2024 and 32 games in 2025 right now. So right down the middle. And he is the growth is phenomenal. There isn't a category where he isn't better, literally, including 3 points, by the way. It was 30.1% on December 31st, and he went all the way up to 35.1 through last night. But the free throw percentage, 69.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
69.7 to like 89%. The 2-point percentage is like, his true shooting percentage is over 60 right now. Jaden McDaniels, the guy who everybody left open all the time the first 6 weeks of the season.
And last night.
Yeah. And to his credit, I mean, I know Jim Pete shouted out, all the threes he was turning down. Absolutely. Keep turning down those threes because it was a successful strategy against him. And we saw him. I mean, he had a little boomlet of shooting well at three, and I got on the bandwagon right away and said, hey, every aspect of his game has gotten a lot better, including the threes. And then he promptly went in the tank. I really do think he is a mediocre at best 3-point shooter and will be probably for the rest of his career. 90% of the threes he takes are wide open, and he's still making about a third of them. That is relatively consistent. 2 years ago, he had an outlier, 39%, but that is a career outlier. And on the other hand, what he does off the bounce, I've begun to take the position that the way you do things can be as important as the result of what those things are.
Love that.
And I really do think that McDaniels being aggressive toward the rim has fostered movement without the ball by the other people, has fostered the extra passes by people because it isn't just a swing, jack up a shot. There's just a pep right now to this team and a sense of all the three components of Finch's flow offense are finally in sync. And McDaniels is one of the keys to that because, let's face it, it was the default right play for a long time. And that right play produced bupkis. I mean, it was not something that the Wolves were playing the right way and not getting anything out of it. And that will drag you down. And it will also make you kind of closet resent the person that's doing that. No. And so by contrast, when somebody says, nice pass, but I'm not going to take that three, I'm going to go inside, go through two guys. And meanwhile, I'm going to cut straight up the middle on numerous occasions and get catch and slam. I mean, they're running Rudy plays right now. In terms
100%. No, that is a fact. Yeah.
And he is cutting straight to the basket. They're hitting him, and he is so much better, obviously, at finishing than Rudy. Not that, I mean, I don't want to get way over our skis here and thinking that Gobert is expendable or, it's something that small lineup should necessarily supplant people. I do think it's great to have in your quiver. It's good to have as an option. But specific to McDaniels, I think he's been a catalyst. I think that we now understand what a numbingly drudge, terrible thing it is to be a wing stopper and make it personal every night. And just, the guy looks like he's been, given a reprieve off death row out there. He's just having so much fun.
No, there's a lot of those things. I want to do the wing stopper change because I think that's evolved him defensively. But the bigger thing is the offensive evolution and kind of hitting a different level. Like you said, his numbers are up across the board in 2025. I like that. It was there's been 32 games in 2024 and 32 in 2025. I happened to do it from the Randle,
which also was cool because it was 16.
16, yeah, so it's a quarter. so this is what I have for just Jaden's usage. Like if all of his numbers had spiked, like efficiency wise, you would think the usage went down. That's typically how those things work. But in the first 48 games of the season, Jaden McDaniels had a usage rate over 18% 7 times. That's about, 100%. It's about 5 guys on the floor, 20% about average. So about 18% an average, above average usage rate. 7 times he did it in the first 48 games. in the last 16 games, he's had a usage rate over 18 11 times. And so that element of his game is spiking there, and it's tapping into that more of that talent. And I think you brought up the teammates who, they're seeing that in practice all the time. We've seen for 5 years Jaden be the fourth or fifth option. This is our first month really ever seeing Jaden be a second option, a second or third option ever. I could think of, like, I remember one game in Chicago maybe 2 years ago, like Ant was out and it was Jaden, but it is like literally very few games over the course of his career where you would be like, okay, yeah, Jaden was a main guy here. And again, I say it because the teammates are seeing it all the time. And I thought it was Julius Randle had a really good quote to Jim Pete and Grady after the game, asked about Jaden, and he said, quote, "Man, we need him. Jaden is so talented, extremely talented. He's gifted, man. He can do a lot of different things, and he works his butt off. We need him to play with that confidence because it gives us a whole different level as a team," end quote. And that's the truth of it, is he's going to fall back into this fourth or fifth spot in the pecking order when he's on the floor. And the question is, can he still show his talents there? And in these 3 games that DiVincenzo and Randle have been back, we are seeing that same talent, that special elements of his size and skill set show up, even though other players are coming. I agree with that, concept from Julius, that of course there would be a whole different level. I mean, how many different teams, when you and I do these podcasts when in the playoffs and the Wolves are out, I feel like every single time we're doing like a Josh Giddey segment. You know what I mean? It's who's the one guy who's going to be a problem for the spacing for the offense. The defense is going to be able to take him, who's going to be able to mess up the offense because he's going to leave that guy wide open. And Jaden has been the number one candidate for that with the Wolves forever. And again, even last night, the Hornets treated him as such. We've seen that over the course of time. And if Jaden McDaniels can punish that, it makes teams, one, need to not be able to load up as much on other players, and also just guard him with a player who plays his position, which has cascading impacts to then everybody else is being guarded.
Because there are so many quality people on the Wolves that are 3/4s.
Exactly. So it's just it's a massive shift in that way of just being able to show his talents. I think that the other thing that shows up when we talk about like how it looks is just where the shots are coming from, right? And traditionally we would just typically say, it's more mid-range shots. But I went through this morning and looked at some of the numbers. I thought this was interesting. If you look at pre-Randle injury to post-Randle injury, he's shooting fewer shots at the rim now, but shooting 75% at the rim when he's there, which is an insane number. That's a center number at the rim. He's shooting 150% of the shots from that short mid-range floater range that he was before. That's a big leap in the percentage of
and that is the pull down from the 3-point line. That is basically what you do when you don't take the three. You wind your way in, and that's what happens.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so he's, again, it's another example of doing something more and being more effective while doing it, which doesn't, if this was just straight math, doesn't logically check out. He's hitting 49% in these last 16 games from that short mid-range area, where in the first 48, he was shooting 39%. He's shooting twice as many long mid-range shots now than he was before, but he was making 52% of them before, and he's making 52% of them currently. He is a good mid-range shooter on low volume, when it's kind of comes within the flow. Overall, was shooting 42% from mid-range previously. Now he's at 50%. If you put that short mid-range, the floater with the long mid-range together there. And then the 3-point volume has dropped. It's like 3/4 of what it was.
Yeah, it was. That's one stat I do remember looking up. It was 41% of his shot mix in 2024 and 31% in 2025.
Yep, So I guess that goes back to even before then. And Well, we'll talk about Gobert some. I'm curious later. I'm curious of how Jaden specifically can do that stuff in the middle of the floor, closer to the basket, when there's less middle of the floor spacing. But what we do know, I think, is that if there is this space for him to be able to, do his little Flintstones thing from the corner and get his feet moving before he catches the ball and goes, like, this will work. I don't think any of this is a flash in the pan. It's just like a repurposing of how he's playing, so he does more of the things that he's good at and less of the things that he's bad at. And he's just been, or not as good at. He's just not had the opportunity to do those things. And it's been the blessing in disguise of these injuries to extended injuries to DiVincenzo and Randle that we've been able to see that come to fruition.
I'll tell you another really great silver lining in this is that, and another reason why this will probably sustain, is because he is not ball hogging at all. When he goes into the lane, he's looking for people as much as he's looking for the rim. He is not somebody who I'm sure his assists are way up. I can't remember exactly what it was, but he's really making the extra pass. He's also very confidently making the extra pass at the 3-point line. If he doesn't think he has the shot or the way inside, he will dish it quickly. He's really gotten into playing with Nas, and both of them being like front court in and out type players has really stimulated a rapidity of ball movement between the two of them that is really nice to see, that probably, bore some fruit from what they did in the summertime when they're just kind of working out together and whipping the ball around. But what I like about what he's doing is, it used to be that the ball was in McDaniels' hands. That's the way the play was going to end, one way or another. And that's not happening at all now. That, now he can, off the bounce, he finds interior feeds. He's got some kickouts in there. And so I just think that, that's another big part of this, is that you've got a situation where when he's on the floor, whether he's the 3 or the 4 or the pseudo 5, he can play kind of the same way almost every time. And
Nas helps him do that.
Yeah,
Nas can kind of pivot into a wing.
Right. And where he'll miss when Gobert comes back, I won't fast forward it too much, but against what did he have? 2 putbacks to start the game, and then a slam. He had 1 3. He wound up 10 of 12 from 2 and 3 of 9 from 3. And that should tell you something, that basically says, keep your shot mix about 2/3 2s and 1/3 3s. That's his sweet spot. His sweet spot is like 16 shots, of which 5 are 3s, 11 2s, 5 3s.
I want to talk a little bit about the defensive element of it, but I don't want to cut it short. Let's grab our first break here. Today's show is brought to you by Your Home Improvement Company, and we know that spring's coming. There's it might be time you could afford to have a window being changed because it won't be as cold outside. The Your Home Improvement Company does have their buy 2 get 2 windows free deal going. It really is any home improvement project that you have. They have certified professionals to be able to do that. The deals that they do have going are on the buy 2 windows get 2 free and 30% off bathroom renovations. But I just know that that's going to come up, and you're going to, for some of you here in the spring, or maybe even now, and you're going to need to be thinking about, who do we want to go to? And in Your Home Improvement Company, been a long time sponsor here, helping us out, and we'll give you competitive rates on everything. They also have 0 money down, 0 interest, and 0 payments until 2026. If that helps you kind of make that jump earlier, you can contact Your Home Improvement Company by calling 866-77-YHIC or by going to yourhomeimprovementco.com, Your Home Improvement Company, where it's your home made better. We're also brought to you by Prize Picks, and I was just kind of looking at the slate for this evening. The national TV games are the Celtics playing the Sixers, and then the Lakers playing the Knicks. I'm gonna for sure try and check out that Lakers-Knicks game. And I was thinking about it of guarding Cat, and I was kind of making my whole thing based on thinking about who the Lakers will play so as to defend Cat. And I was just like, all right, Jared Vanderbilt, let's go more than 10.5 points plus rebounds plus assists because he's going to play. Or Dorian Finney-Smith, more than 12.5 points plus rebounds assists because he's going to play to be out there. Or going less than on Jackson Hayes, who's at 14.5 points plus rebounds plus assists because I don't think they'll deploy him on Cat to the degree that they normally would play him. You can't just pick players all from one team in a lineup. So I was like, all right, let's throw our boy Quentin Grimes in there as well, who's been hooping for the Sixers. Give him more than 17.5 points. Obviously, we talk about these a lot for Wolves games. There's no Wolves game tonight, but I kind of find them more fun to look at for what if I am sitting down to watch a national TV game live or just a game live. It's kind of fun to play that game in your head of like, how do I think this game script is going to play out, or who have I been liking watching recently? You can check that out at prizepicks.com or on the Prize Picks app. If you don't have an account, if you sign up using the promo code Dane, that helps me out, lets them know that you came from me, but also gets you $50 in your account when you make your first $5 lineup at prizepicks.com, Prize Picks app. We're not going to exclusively talk about Jaden McDaniels in this episode, but there is a correlation, I believe, to the defensive role shifting to his offense spiking in the way that we're saying. I mean, again, that's it. The math and the logic of usage going up and numbers going up, that just doesn't happen that often without another factor. And as you said before, it's a grind to be guarding Luka Doncic for 36 minutes or maybe getting in foul trouble because of that. And now you're in a mental grind because it's 4 minutes into the game and you're sitting on the bench. We'd always kind of talked about, this is an interesting pivot to have Jaden off ball. We were doing this all the time last year. Like, put Nikhil on the ball or put Ant on the ball and have Jaden, be at the rim, like weak side rim protector, whatever. But it felt like a temporary pivot. It didn't feel like a true strategic move. You would never be like, well, let go of McDaniels at the point of attack. I mean, how could you say that? He was incredible at the point of attack for the last two seasons, making all defense there last year. But again, another blessing in disguise of him needing to kind of play the 4/5 over the last month is really getting able to see extended looks of him off ball. And it's where these like highlights are coming from, or these unique special sort of plays, the block and then a second jump and a block, or rotating over and moving his feet as the ball shifts across the floor. He looks just as special off ball as he does on ball to me, with the added benefit of what it's theoretically allowing him to do on offense. I think this is a real story. And also, you don't have to never play him at the point of attack again. You could get to that if you need to in a series or a game, or somebody else is in foul trouble, whatever. But it was just a real signal to me that they came down first possession of the game and LaMelo Ball's bringing it up the floor last night and Ant's guarding him and not Jaden. When would have that happened? That doesn't make sense. Jaden's better at guarding LaMelo than would be, I mean,
although it is, I also kind of like the idea that you engage Ant because Ant suddenly has a challenge immediately in front of him, which really helps with the overall team scheme if Ant is engaged, because we know what happens if he isn't.
That's true. Yeah, it's a positive externality.
There's a host of things that have made this possible. One of them is not only Na, who obviously is a legitimate rival to Jaden as an on-ball defender, simply because of the way he can play screens. He's the best at negotiating screens on the team, and I don't think it's even close. Right. And so that is incredibly valuable to know that if you make this maneuver, there's not a lot of risk involved other than maybe getting non-foul trouble and having worry a little bit about the point guard situation or whatever. And then the other thing, I think what really cinched the decision for them was Jalen Clark as also somebody
Yeah.
you could put on ball. And so there are two guys, not even counting Ant, because you don't want to blow Ant out on defense too much. You just want to, pique his interest and engagement every now and then. But you do need somebody to do the numbingly grinding drudgery of that job. And Naw will do it. Again, you don't want to waste him too much on it, but Clark will do it for days. And
it's a job for a role player, man, right?
Yeah.
And Jaden was a role player and is
Right.
now evolving into more of a multifaceted player, right?
but
give the
that's
drudgery
not
to the role
possible.
player.
Right. That's not possible without Clark and Naw. But then another thing I think is kind of interesting on the down low, even though Finch kind of disparages his defense, you need somebody for the Zion type stopper too. And Shannon can do that kind of stuff. Maybe not Zion at 260, but I'm talking a legit power forward. I think Terrence Shannon can guard fours. I think he's got the body for it. He's got the will to do it. He's going to have to learn the ways and means of the league, a little bit of like the testing out. He'll get bad whistles for a while. He'll take bad angles sometimes. He'll think he's not moving when he's actually moving, trying to get a charge. All the little things that kids do. But I really do think that there's a lot of potential for him to be occasionally a wing stopper. Maybe not this year, but certainly easily switchable onto those guys. And I just think that we think about the benefits of these young players a lot of times on offense, but Clark and Shannon are plus defenders, I think. And I think Shannon is a better Minot in that Minot was really athletic and good and had good instincts, but didn't have the discipline. And Shannon seems to have the discipline for it. But the point being, again, you free up McDaniels. And it's funny how these things kind of falling dominoes, being able to have McDaniels not be on the ball. His defensive rebounding percentage has gone from 10 to 14% in that 32-32 thing I was talking about.
Sure.
That's how you end possessions. That's how your defensive rating goes down, fewer points per, because you grab those defensive rebounds. He has become a very good defensive rebounder.
Yeah. I mean, when I was talking about the 8, he's averaging 8 rebounds a game in the last 16. I went back to double check. I mean, that is legitimate power forward rebounding numbers.
And you've got last night, all 3 guys in the front court had 10 apiece. I mean, what could be better than that?
Yeah. Well, play it, and because I know
we're going to get
I know we're going to get shit for that and all of this, but I do think these are, again, we're talking about 16 games, 32 games.
Right.
Yeah, it was great against Charlotte. And to be expected there, but again, I think some of these follow.
One of the things I will throw in, since we're on that topic, I don't want to hear about Randle being in the lineup for 8 straight wins. He missed 3 against OKC, 2 against the Rockets, 1 against the Bucks, 1 against the Cavs. They went 5-8, but in the 13
I just think it's about talk about what it looks like rather than result completely. Put the numbers together with what it looks like.
Right, and not to. This is not to besmirch Randle in that way. I mean, there are other ways I could just besmirch him, but it would not be in terms of the way he is playing right now and the desire. He's making much quicker decisions, which, by the way, is a team-wide thing right now. They are getting off the ball. Even Ant lately is getting off the ball. And I understand why Finch keeps on big-upping this team, because even when the results, I mean, they are 5-5 over their last 10. Let's not, really gild the lily here, but essentially they are doing the 3 things on offense that are required to make the Finch system hum, which is they're moving without the ball, they're moving the ball, and they're doing it quickly. And that is pretty team-wide right now.
Mm-hmm. Let's, that is true, while integrating DiVincenzo and Randle is that's saying something, you
That's
know.
right.
And
It is.
so let's talk about them, those two a little bit. And Randle again last night nearly has a triple double. Wasn't at the game, but I was watching Finch's post game press conference afterwards, and he kind of copped to it in the press conference where he was like, at the beginning of the season, we thought we needed him to be a scorer, but over the course of the season, we learned that we need him to be this. Is what Finch said, which is more of an all-around player. It is, I mean, it is being less.
First of all, if they thought they needed scoring out of him the way Randle scores, it's stupid. It is. I mean,
well, they weren't very good. They weren't very good. It wasn't.
Julius Randle in scorer mode is you slow the game down to a crawl. You draw double and triple teams. You have these passes where he's like a quarter of an inch off the ground after a jump and throws you like a little weak ass pass. You've got these.
He throws them pretty hard. He does the
not when he's up in the air, caught between things, and just needs to get rid of it before he hits the ground. And then the whirligig passes. I mean, all I'm saying is that it doesn't have to be that hard if you're playing team basketball rather than saying, I need to get mine.
Yeah. So it sounds like you're holding on to the priors a little bit more than I am right now, which is fair because there's a lot of priors that.
Well, and also he also had the benefit of shooting well from outside during the priors. So I'll just give you again, I always want to preface this by saying that Julius Randle has done everything that's been asked of him. He found himself, I think, in a ridiculously tough situation. Not necessarily that the Knicks would have been better. It's hard to integrate his game the way he was playing coming into the season in the modern NBA.
Yeah, right.
The fact that he has begun to do that has been great. But I will say that he shoots more threes per game than Mike Conley, and he is shooting 29.5%.
Fair. That's fair.
And Mike Conley, by the way, which we can get into later, I've offered my defense of Conley, who's really like on everybody's shit list lately. So we'll get into that later, though. Go ahead.
Well, I just, with Randle, he just looks healthier to me than he did at the beginning of the season. And, apparently he was really working over the month that he was out and being able to getting in shape, and you could tell that first game that he was back for, just walking out to the jump, right? Like he just looked kind of thinner, and I mean, still he's always gonna be strong, muscular, but there's just been a greater zip to the way that he's been playing since he returned. And I was thinking about this last night. I just wonder where his shoulder was at the beginning of the season. I understand this is making excuses and stuff like that, but I don't think we can completely dismiss that because when he got traded for, he was hurt. Like he was out. He was not playing in training camp. He was not playing. He didn't play till the very last preseason game, I believe.
Yeah, Iowa. I think he didn't even play in Iowa.
Chicago. Yeah, it was Chicago.
Right.
And then it's the first game of the season a couple days later in LA. And he wasn't. I mean, I don't know exactly where his health was. Next time we're around the team, I want to ask him about that. But I can't help but hypothesize that was somewhat of a factor. And be a factor lower than all the things that you just listed off, and it being a tricky situation and his style and all those things. But I just physically, and just for listeners, if you just haven't caught a lot of these last 3 games or whatever, it looks physically different, and he just looks healthier to me, or it seems like it might be health, might be a factor there as well. And that's very glass half full. But if there is anything to that theory, then there is a greater upside to his game offensively and a greater upside to the Wolves offense as a whole. And I'm going to keep my mind open to that, along with the stylistic shift of his play that we've, begun to see, not just in these 3 games, but he was playing well before he got hurt. He was playing stylistically this way back in January before before he got hurt. You know, that Phoenix game, that Utah game, he looked like this, and then he got hurt. So I think there's going to still be the Julius Randle games. That's
Right.
baked into some of who he is. He's not a perfect player, but I think I would bet the frequency of those is very much down here in the last quarter of the season compared to the first 3 quarters of the season.
And there are reasons for that. I mean, you know, he's got a player option,
Sure.
you know, and you know, he's got to make a good impression. But here is one of the ways that I will give him all kinds of props. The guy has a lot of mental toughness. He replaced Karl Anthony Towns, who was a polarizing player, but had a tremendously positive fan base within those polarized groups. You know, there was a pretty large contingent of pro-Cat people, even when a lot of people didn't like him. And they wanted that trade to be a bad trade for the Wolves, to punish the Wolves for Cat leaving. And then the person he's blocking for minutes is Naz Reid, who's like a folk hero around here. And so he's got those 2 strikes against him. He's got an aesthetically displeasing way of playing when he's in his own bag. And that was evident right out of the chute. The Timberwolves weren't winning as much as they should have. And he became a punching bag. I don't know. I worked the bag a while, you know, I mean, it was, you know,
You did.
I mean, and I still, to this day, maintain that the best lineup is Naz next to Rudy. And I won't shirk from that. But that doesn't.
And I'm not asking you to.
No,
to be clear,
I know.
Both can be good.
Exactly. And it needs to be emphasized that even though the competition was really tough, they did go 5-8. We had a lot of fun with the Jaden Naz front court, but no Rudy, no Randle is problematical. And you need a guy who can go get you a bucket, especially in the playoffs, especially if Ant is getting ganged up on the perimeter. There are ways that he can be valuable. It has always been endlessly perplexing to me. The Wolves have made the decision as an organization that they were going to utilize everything they could out of Randle this season at the cost of probably knowing that that's what they're going to get, and that's it, you know?
Right.
And so it's an interesting maneuver. On the other hand, there's a logic to it. They have the second highest payroll, in the NBA. Tim Connolly went out of his way to say, you know, we're at the Final Four table where the big boys eat, and, you know, we're eating this year. And then he makes this trade for money reasons, and I agree with the trade. But all of this rolls downhill onto Julius Randle, who has been nothing with the media but a soft-spoken, thoughtful guy, being available when he needs to be available, giving credit to his teammates. Chris Finch is a straight shooting guy who has been in this corner at some cost to Finch's own popularity. But those 2 guys have, from day one, professed faith in each other. And Julius Randle, whether you like him or not, has played better than even I think his adherents would suspect, not necessarily in terms of numbers, but in terms of making himself valuable to a team, making himself valuable under circumstances that are difficult circumstances, while ignoring a lot of voices telling him he's got to get out of town. And that takes mental toughness, and to work your game against your instincts and to tailor yourself to make the team better, even as you know that your future with this team is iffy at best. That's a team guy, and that's that. Hats off to him.
If Julius Randle, the soft-spoken Julius Randle, it's reminding me of Jeff Teague.
I'm glad you brought him up because I was going to say when I was saying, somebody who got Jeff Teague squealed like a pig when I'm replacing Rubio. And,
exactly. Well, that's what I'm talking about from the replacing Cat element, and Rubio was also a folk hero in ways similar to Naz Reid. And while, and maybe the Jeff Teague thing serves as a cautionary tale here, is it got bad quick, but that first year Jeff Teague was good. 17-18 season where the Wolves were the 3 seed until Jimmy got hurt at the end, and they end up falling down. But even Jeff Teague was really good in that first round playoff series against the Rockets. And sometimes we do, not just that fans, I mean us too, where you have your own thoughts and biases through that block a little bit of the truth from what you're talking about to be the reality. And no, I'm not saying Jeff Teague was incredible or an all-star or anything like that, but he was better than I was giving him credit for that season. I think if I think back in hindsight, and I think something like that is happening with Randle, as you just kind of laid out there.
I'll push back to the point of saying that I think Teague did play the victim, the anti-Rubio card.
Yeah, that's the difference.
Body slamming some guy out of bounds. And joining the Jimmy hate parade. And one thing I will give him credit for, though, is sticking up for Cat when Tibbs tried to say Cat needs to be more of a screener and not so much of a shooter in the playoffs against Houston, for Christ's sake. And and Teague said, "What? We got to get this guy the ball, don't we?" and so hats off to him for that.
That was hilarious.
What I will say, for better or worse, what I am saying is that for better or worse, Jeff Teague speaks his mind, and sometimes it makes him sound petty, and sometimes it makes him sound brave. So
it's leading to a thriving podcasting career. I don't think Julius Randle is going to have the same there. Britt, let's move to DiVincenzo a little bit. Kyle and I went into a lot of the value of just the spacing that comes with the shooting, and specifically, the distance with which DiVincenzo lines up. But some of it is as simple as he's shot 56% from 3 on really high volume since he's returned. Just sort of your general thoughts on DiVincenzo and what, as we're going to see, it seems a shift from DiVincenzo moving back to being the starting point guard once his minutes restriction is up, and maybe Conley sliding back. Like, how do you think this version of DiVincenzo is going to impact the main group as if he moves to being a starter?
I think his value on defense is much more than his value on offense, quite frankly.
DiVincenzo?
Yeah.
Okay, go on.
Okay, well, Na can't play the point, really. He can pretend to be a point guard. I think DiVincenzo, after a very rocky first 6 or 7 weeks where he was driving Steve Nash like underneath the basket, jumping in the air, and then whipping it toward some teammate within 3 opponents, had a really rough beginning as a quote-unquote point guard, but fell into a rhythm of getting off the ball quickly. He's done the weave well. But
what does this have to do with his defense?
Well, what I'm saying is that he has learned how to offensively suffice as a point guard. Okay? The other options on this team as a point guard are Mike Conley and Rob Dillingham. Mm-hmm. It's not Nickeil Alexander, who cannot really be a point guard. We see what happens when he makes one turnover and then gets pressured. He's in line. I do not want him being your primary point guard in the playoffs or any other really high leverage situation. He's a great clutch shooter. He's great off the ball, and he's great being a middleman in these kind of weave situations as well. Conley, it's become clear Conley needs Rudy Gobert on the floor to be a capable defender now. And he is a capable defender when Rudy Gobert is on the floor. Where he is getting wiped out, and Jake Painting did a really nice, in fact, I linked it in this last column I did, because it was a pretty damning indictment of Clips. But a lot of it has to do with the fact that Gobert is out for this stuff. And Gobert made a career in Utah out of covering mediocre defenders, on-ball defenders, by covering their ass, literally. And so all I know is in those 8 games that Gobert was out, I did a check, and the Wolves were 119-4, I think it was, with Conley on the floor in terms of points given up per 100 possessions. It was terrible. But overall for the season, Conley is right in line with the Wolves in general. You know, his net rating is 3.3. The team's is 3.4. The defense is actually a push. But the toughness of being able to not have to use Gobert's attention to help Conley out so that Gobert can be freer.
I get where you're coming from.
And having DiVincenzo on the floor, he's tall. He's a gambler, which is problematic, but at the same time, he's pretty good at it. He is also not afraid to do one of those intervening dives that probably 60% of the time is a foul.
Mm-hmm.
But I really think it's an effective move, because guys who are, you know, like the equivalent of now bringing the ball up, who see somebody like DiVincenzo, have it in the back of their mind, don't get the ball too near him, because he'll try to steal it. So the point is, he's got the size, which Dillingham and Conley both do not have. He's got the tenacity, which Conley certainly has, but Conley also does not have the gambling gene that would. What it really comes down to is DiVincenzo will not continue to hit 58% of his 2 or 3s or whatever, but he will become a valuable player, because there will be lineups where Rudy isn't in the game and he is the point guard, where things will be fine on the perimeter because of him, and that's really valuable.
Yeah, okay, I get what you're saying there. I'm not sure I would say that's more valuable than the offense in my opinion, because I think even if he doesn't continue shooting over 50% from 3, which you won't, the spacing will remain, and the gravity of DiVincenzo at 28 feet will remain. Or if it doesn't, you know, they'll punish it by, you know, Ant will drive to the middle of 4, Nikhil will drive to the middle of 4 and find him, and he'll shoot him, and he'll hit him at a 40% clip. I think we know that about DiVincenzo, and we don't need to argue about what side of the ball,
right? Sure.
More or less, but collectively, it's a point guard, if he's going to be playing point guard, that is just quite obviously going to provide significantly more value than Mike Conley has really at any point of this entire season. Though it is I am related to Conley because we know he's still going to keep playing. I was saying to Kyle yesterday, it's like the Kyle Anderson thing a year ago, where it was driving people crazy that, you know, Slow-mo was sitting in the corner and Finch was continuing to do that, and the offense was struggling, but Finch continued to do that. The same thing's going to happen with Conley. So if Conley's going to continue to play, it is important that he is there with Gobert. I was thinking about it kind of more from the, okay, it can get Conley a little bit more of an offensive rhythm, get back into some pick and roll game, get back into that floater game a little bit. But you're right. The presence of Gobert, again, we're going to talk about, like, is going to be disorienting in many ways. One area it's going to for sure help is Mike Conley, and that's one of the areas this team is bleeding, you know, most.
But what I will say, because
you're going to argue with me affirming your point.
I'm going to argue with you on the idea. First of all, I will grant you the spacing, only to the extent we're talking 28 feet versus 23 feet, right?
Oh, because you're saying because Conley they would respect too. Yeah, true.
What I will tell you is that Mike Conley had that wrist problem in, you know, you used Randle, I'm using Conley, but I do think, I mean, he copped to it, and he wouldn't otherwise cop to it. The 4 games in October, Conley was 6-22 from 3. Okay.
From
November 1st to now, except for Jalen Clark's little sample size, Mike Conley has shot the three better than anybody on the team. Better than Ant, better than DDV, better than Nas.
What's the percentage? Like
40.7 or 40.8. Ant is 40.7. DDV is 40.6. Nas is 39.8. They're all bunched there, but we all know how valuable the other three guys are. We don't think about Mike Conley as a three-point threat. And why is that? Because Mike Conley is self-effacing. He takes fewer threes per game than Julius Randle.
Yeah.
And what needs to happen is the DVDs, Jaden McDaniels, Julius Randles of the world need to either find him on passes or set good screens for him. Mm-hmm. And that's another thing. Gobert really helps him on defense, but Gobert also really helps him on offense. And Conley really helps Gobert on offense because he gets him looks in rhythm that other players have a hard time doing. Mm. And in defensive DDV, I think DiVincenzo has a pretty good relationship with Gobert too on passing. So
yeah, I would say, right, there's different ways to look at quality of shooters, and even just that whole kind of math equation of what the percentage is versus the volume. And
right.
And DiVincenzo shoots more threes, but he also, I think, has a three-point shooter skill set that allows him to shoot more threes. I think he has a quicker release. He has a quicker depth at which he could shoot it. He's just more aggressive. I mean, his three-point shooting is most similar to, stylistically, I think, Steph, whereas Conley is an elite spot-up guy, and so that is a difference that is an additional difference other than the 23 feet versus the 28 feet.
And another thing I think is that DiVincenzo is a shooter and Conley is a point guard. Mm. And that is another reason Conley has fallen off this year, because Conley very rarely plays the point, really the point. Yeah. If you remember the way Mike Conley played when he came over in February 3 years ago versus the way he plays now, it's night and day. And I understand the reasons for it, and I'm not even necessarily sure I disagree with it. But as we rip Mike Conley up one side and down the other, we need to realize that his defense overall is not lacking relative to the teams, especially when Gobert is there, that he remains a great shooter, that he is currently has a career high 91.7% from the line. Where he falls down completely this year is from 2-point territory. Mm. His previous worst season, first of all, he's never been a good 2-point shooter. His career high amongst 18 seasons is 49.7. He has never hit 50% of his threes. I mean, his twos, okay? Which is rare. Most people hit 50% of
them. Can't get to the rim.
Yeah. The worst before this year was 43.7. This year it's like 365.
Yeah. Oh,
and that, as a result, he has the worst because he only gets to the line 1.2 times per game, which is so far the worst of his career, that he has the worst true shooting percentage of his career, even though the dude currently is making 39.7% of his threes right now.
Those are good points. And it is actually, a little bit of a shift in my head of like what to expect from Conley once Gobert gets back. I will say, I think the areas that you are describing as weaknesses that can't have shown to be covered up this season by Gobert or helpful in other areas, I am concerned about those areas being exploited in a playoff series, as they were last year.
Because they come in a package.
Yeah.
You cannot put Conley on the floor against, say, Houston. You couldn't last year against Dallas. I mean, that's the one you're referring to, and it's a very good point. He cannot be the low man very often. If he's the low man, then there's going to be a tilt in everyone's thinking. Conley as a low man is like a post up.
Right.
And, it just, he can be, game all he wants. I asked Finch about this after the game the other night, and he said, the usual. Part of it was an apology for Conley, saying we got to help him more, so on and so forth. Well, all true, and he is 38 years old or whatever, and he is a fighter, and he does work hard down there. But at the end of the day, if you put a guy who's 220 pounds who knows how to post up, he needs help, and he needs help quickly. Either that or he's got to foul. And
so
that's a tailor-made problem for the playoffs.
Yeah, no, for sure. So I'm trying to think of solutions, right? How do you get Mike Conley out of that position where he a year ago got
punished? One would be zone, obviously.
Yeah, but you're not going to do that. You're not going to be able to rely on that in the playoffs. I think it would be, and what they tried to do in the Dallas series was put him at the point of attack and have him guard Kyrie.
Right.
And I mean, I think Mike has gotten worse at being a point of attack defender this season.
I would agree with that.
We also don't see him there very often, or as his primary role, because of what we listed off before, because there's like 6 guys on the team who are really good at being able to do that. So I think if we're going to kind of square peg Mike Conley into playing into the playoffs, it would be important that he would be able to guard the point of attack and get out of those situations more often. I think you could spin that in a positive way. I think he might be a guy who they go, you point at and you go, let's bring him up, get him into the action, get him switched on to the guy. And that might seem like a disadvantage for the Wolves when maybe it's better than the alternative, which was him being left.
You dictate the matchup rather than the opponent dictate.
Yeah,
I get that.
I don't know. I mean, I still need to see a lot more from Mike Conley and playing with Gobert and all these things for me to have any confidence in him in a playoff series. But if he's going to be there, these are things that have to happen if it's going to work.
And I think you have to build it out. I think you have to start with Conley and Gobert, and then you have to say, all right, who are the other 3 people on the floor?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Well, I want to talk about the offense here as well, just more globally. Since January 1st, the Wolves are 6th in offensive rating this season. Prior to that, they were 20th. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it goes since January 1st, it goes OKC, Cleveland, Denver, Indiana, Memphis, Minnesota. So Wolves better offenses than Boston, New York, the Lakers, the Kings, the Bucks, the Warriors. In that time, a lot of it is the turnover rate really dropping since then, and then just kind of figuring out a lot more of this flow and who fits where. And I'm reminded of that 2021-22 season, the year before Rudy Gobert came to the Wolves, and that season, the Wolves from January 1st on were number 1 in offensive rating for January, February, March, April, and May. I mean, a really extended period of time. And it just, to me, brings up this question of, is this something that is inherent to the nature of Finch's coaching offense? That there is a long lag time, longer than you would like for things to kind of acclimate. But when they do, they click and they roll. And it hasn't happened every year, but it happened then, and it happened in a real way where they went from that January 1st on. The Wolves not only had the number 1 offense, they went 30-17. So it wasn't just like they were giving up a bunch of points. It was number 13 defense in that time. I'm doing a lot of looking at this stuff through rose-colored glasses, but there's some of that makes sense to me, that there's just an acclimation process. That acclimating takes a while to the Finch offense. You look at that 21-22 season, it was his first full year of being the head coach. You had a team that was really trying to figure itself out, like new pieces. Beasley and Russell were beginning to fit in around Anthony Edwards and Karl Anthony Towns, and it's his second season, is kind of elevating. And it was just a little bit of it was chaos. They made the starting lineup
Right.
change where they brought in Vando and Beverly, and it just took a while. And I wonder if this is a situation that is similar, not just in it turning the corner at January 1st, but similar underlying, that there was a lot of things that had to kind of come together that were just simply going to, to take time. And I don't know. What do you make of that?
I think for better or worse, and in this case, as a big Chris Finch supporter, I still have to grudgingly say I think it's for worse, that he is exceedingly patient with his players.
Yeah.
And he basically says, all right, this is what I want you to do. This is what I want you to do. This is what I want you to do. And I do think that we've all seen in pre and post game press conferences lately that his patience and his knowledge of how much is left in the season or how little is left in the season is certainly becoming more evident. And so I think he's leaning into it a little harder. But I also think the steady, hey, this is what we need to do. This is what you're not doing. He says it all over and over and over again with every film session, but he never seems to get more and more exasperated. Every now and then he'll go off in public. I don't know how often he goes off in private, but I also know
sounds like a lot
that he gives a leash to his players that if they don't have more integrity, they can abuse. And I think in the course of a long season, it has been abused. This team has been maddeningly lacking in finality when it plays teams that it's clearly superior to. In that respect, it's very similar to 2 years ago. So you got to think transition has something to do with that. The idea that they haven't gone through the trenches together for an entire year. You have two members of the 7-man rotation, even if you want to. I mean, I think DiVincenzo's in the top 7, if not obviously the top 8. But I really do think that the reason the offense is working now is partly because time is getting short, partly because there's been a lot of injuries, and so therefore players have had a chance to seize new roles that they prefer playing.
Sure.
Nas prefers to play up tempo and that way, and McDaniels obviously prefers what he's doing right now. So I think Finch waits until they figure it out and then praises them for figuring it out. I think it's cost them some games. I think if he was
bad or is it good, or is it okay that it comes together?
Well, I mean, let's talk about the Portland losses or the Washington loss, or those maybe a foot in the ass gets you a couple more wins and you're already in the 6th seed. I don't know.
But I don't think it's that he's not putting a foot in the ass. I think it's that he's not. He's being overly patient with making changes to the structure of how the rotation works or the offense works.
I also think that he just by nature likes to structure his offense around what his players show him they'd like to play. And so, I mean, that's what he is.
Yeah.
And that was something he said to a WCCO reporter right before I was going to do my first Chris Finch interview. I Googled Chris Finch interview, and this thing came up. And this guy from CCO, I don't even know who he was. He's probably gone from the station by now. And if he isn't, I apologize. But he said, how do you build your offense? And Finch said, I watch the players, I let them play, and what they do naturally well, I design plays around that, and I use that. And I asked him about it, that interview right afterwards, and he totally copped to it, and it's become part of my understanding of how he coaches ever since then. And so I think if by nature you're that way, you're not going to say, hey, do it this way, I think he's too patient. The short answer to your question.
I get that. I get that.
The idea that the patience is rewarded is also something to keep in mind.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I mean, it's hard to, yeah, I'm thinking back to that Phoenix game end of January where, all the players talked about him going off on them before in the film session and
getting tossed.
I just think there is an element to this of like how fast do your players learn. And I agree to an extent that Finch is overly patient. It's just that can't be. I don't believe that's the only variable here. And I
agree.
And I think it's another one of those things for me where it's like a lot of the things when I start going through and I'm making a list of like what isn't making sense to me that Finch is doing, or this hasn't, looking back in a month, or this hasn't been working. And so often those things you could go, well, Ant is a big element of that. How fast is Ant learning that? How fast did Ant adjust? And then he does, and he learned. I mean, Ant being in his early 20s doesn't learn like that at the speed that a 27, 28-year-old would or has. So there's all these elements that tie to it there. It is just interesting to see the turn.
As I said at Falling Knife during the live show there, I think Finch has made a bargain, a pact, whether spoken or unspoken. He lets Ant be in as much as he possibly can. And as a result, he gets the unquestioning loyalty of a team superstar. Right. Somebody to the point where, again, he did it the other day, just in the locker room after a win. Finchy had this meeting with us and it was exactly what we needed. And ta-da. I mean, and I can't count the times that Ant has said, thank God for Finch, essentially. And how many times has Ant said, nope, Chris Finch made a mistake here, it was bad. How often has he ever said that without going back on it 2 days later? Right. So if you're a head coach and you have a star who, if they announces they're not that happy with the team, is going to throw the entire organization into chaos and basically put you on the hot seat immediately.
Sure.
I think it's a pretty interesting way to work it. And the flip side of that, of course, is that, what is it, season 5, age 23 or 24?
23, yeah.
There will come a time when, he's young and, give him time is pretty hollow excuse. Right. But I don't think we're there yet.
I want to do a little bit of Gobert. Let me grab one more here. Sure. Today's show is brought to you by Treasure Island Resort and Casino, and we want to put Treasure Island on your radar for March Madness as that's coming up here in March. They have just a ton of promotions going on at Treasure Island in the month of March, but even before March Madness happens. But if you do go and you get a Island Passport Club card, it's like a it's a player's card for being there. They have a deal going on for this month where you're earning these player points, and they're giving away $440,000 worth of promotions over the course of that month. 4 different winners are going to win a $60,000 Chevy gift card for a truck. So I was just thinking about it as want places to go and be able to watch these March Madness games. You might not think of Treasure Island right away, but we've done some live shows there, and they really do have a really cool setup for watching it there. So I would put that on your radar, and go win a truck. They're giving away again $440,000 in promotions that month. For more information and a full list of upcoming promotions, you can visit ticasino.com. We are also brought to you by Adriana Lonick at Coldwell Banker Realty. And if you are in the market for buying or selling a home in Minnesota or Wisconsin, you need a realtor. And Adriana has actually worked with a handful of listeners from this show to purchase new homes or sell new homes. And if you're just in that spot and you're thinking about making that leap, would love it if you signed up for a free consultation with Adriana over at Coldwell Banker Realty. And the promotion we have is the people who do sign up for these free consultations, one will win some lower level Timberwolves tickets to a game here at the end of the season. You can get more information about Adriana, how to contact her, how this all works by going to thedancingrealtor.com, or you can call or text at 715-304-9920. It's again, Adriana Lonick, Coldwell Banker Realty, thedancingrealtor.com, or 715-304-9920. Britt, related to the offense, spiking as it has, comes this Gobert element coming to be reintegrated into this team, and obviously he is an absolute surge of defense productivity, and that will come when he's back. But the offense this season with Gobert on the floor is 5.7 points per 100 possessions worse than it is that's his on-off differential, which is the biggest on the team. You look at it and it's 113-1 with him on the court. That's like the equivalent of the 19th best offense in the league. And with Rudy off the floor, the offensive rating is 118.9, which is the equivalent of like the 6th best offensive team in the league. Again, it's not only one side of the ball. The differential is almost the same the other way, where when the Wolves have Rudy on the floor and are playing defense, they defend as well as anyone other than Oklahoma City, the equivalent of number 2. And with Rudy off, they fall down to mediocre, 14th. About
very similar to Cat.
Inverted.
Cat, well, I mean, in terms of the fact, yeah, exactly. You remember all the times when we would say, if Cat's on the floor, their offense is amazing and their defense is awful.
Yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm.
And I think that the eye test bears this out. When Gobert is on the floor, and they are trying to integrate him, it's almost as bad or worse as when they're not trying to integrate him. That's what bothers me, is that it's not that he's become an untapped resource. I think I would put him in the dunker spot or have him screen multiple times, but I do not want to hit him early on the roll ever again. It's like McDaniels from 3, Gobert from like 12 feet is a turnover waiting to happen. I understand his assists are a career high. I think last time I looked it up, and he has that little robotic spin move where he, basically hits some man with a pass. I think that's been scouted a fair bit and will be again. If
can I interject there really quick?
Yeah.
Okay, I hear you saying it's not the prettiest thing, Rudy, on the short roll. We've seen some passing there. It's not great. I just what is the alternative if Rudy comes up and sets a screen for Ant, which will happen all of the time, and they sell out to blitz that and put 2 on the ball on Ant, which they just do all of the time and stay home on everyone else.
Then you swing, and then the swing man hits Gobert down near the hoop in the dunker spot.
It's very difficult to swing when you're being 2 on the ball and trapped. I mean, everyone else is going to. I mean, we saw this, dude. We saw this for the first 55 games of the season. The open spot there is Rudy in the middle of the floor. I don't think there's.
Well, then I wouldn't run it in the middle of the floor. I'd run it on the side. I'd run a side pick and roll and either go strong side or weak side with your swing. Mm-hmm. But I do think that a hockey assist off a Rudy pick and roll is preferable to an immediate hitting him from 12 feet. I just don't think that works.
Mm-hmm. No, and it's to me, it's a real issue of when he has to catch it there and look to the basket.
Right.
I have more faith in the pass out of that, particularly if it's wide open and somebody come. Like, I think he can make the robotic pass. It's a huge cost that he does not have the Hartenstein 8-foot push shot.
Right. Well, I mean, and another thing, since we're back on Mike Conley in some respects. In this case, Conley is really good at hitting him in stride on a hard roll. And I think that's what you have to do. All I'm saying is,
but that's going to happen for sure when it's Conley. It's just there's going to be a significantly lower volume of they're not going to not do the Ant
right.
pick and roll, right? Like,
well, I mean, again, I think what you have to do there is maybe run stagger or horns or something where you basically don't have it be only. It can't be as simple. I don't think you can run simple and pick and rolls.
I like that. Yeah, no, there's got to be a greater creativity to it, because it's much like the whole Jaden, thing where they're just going to choose the weakest offensive option, and Jaden's done a good job of overcoming some of that. And I'm not sure Rudy doesn't have those next levels offensively to be able to do it, but it is important, to effectively involve him. And it's been why the turnover differential is huge when Rudy's on the floor. That they turn the ball over significantly more because they're trying to hit him in the pocket there, or he's turning it over there. It's been something, Rudy's been out for like a month now almost, that we haven't seen that issue. I'm not denying it's an issue. I'm just also, he's gonna play.
Right.
And,
yeah, I agree.
There's just going to need to be care taken there. I don't have all the answers of what exactly that is. This is why I'm concerned about it.
Yeah.
And the offense.
And to be honest with you, I hadn't, my responses are just on the fly. I mean, I do imagine if Randle and Rudy are on the floor, you could do that stagger pick and roll and find somebody open if you have a good ball handler. Mm-hmm. I think somebody like DiVincenzo, who also presents that spacing threat you're talking about, as a strong side option. Yeah. Or basically there are ways, I think, or maybe, you run Randle on the roll on the stagger rather than Rudy or whatever. But I mean, I guess all I'm saying is
don't lean into that. Is what I think you're saying. Don't lean into the Ant.
Don't lean in. Yeah, don't lean in. Definitely don't lean into the Ant Rudy pick and roll. And also, I think that Ant does a pretty good job especially when he is in a rhythm, and especially when his three is going and they're already inclined to come out, of threading his way through pretty well. And then you can hit Rudy when the big has to come up from the paint rather than from the foul line.
Yeah. No, and I think a big part of it is just, can Ant, not to poo-poo your Conley thing, but it's like, can Ant do more of the Conley stuff, right?
Exactly.
Finding him within the
well, I mean, and we've seen that happen. Sometimes he can, but not often. Not.
It's about belief, right? From Ant, we see when Ant has belief, and it's a confidence. Like with Jaden and Nas, like when they're playing confidently offensively, there's a huge impact on the offense as a whole. When Ant's playing more confident in Rudy, and then the group is playing more confident offensively in Rudy, we get a better offense there. But it's not clean. I'm not arguing any of it's clean, and it just I would think another element, and we've seen a little bit of just Rudy lining up like in the slot a little bit more. I remember that a lot at the end of last season, I think.
I know.
And you know what? And I wouldn't even rule this out either. Rudy in the corner. Even not necessarily to shoot it, but like
on his way to the dunker spot. See, I just want to get him down to the dunker spot eventually. Because I think that even then, if you miss the shot, Rudy used to make a living on putbacks. Yeah. And I'm not saying he still can as well as he used to in his prime.
I think he can. I think the concern with him in the dunker spot is that his man then leaves him to go over to cut off the Ant drive, right? Mm-hmm. And then it becomes about, can Ant find Rudy on that lob from the dunker spot? Which
and what I'm saying, the dunker spot for me would be a place for putbacks rather than a place for feeds. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And again, obviously, I'm sure much smarter minds than ours have really worked this. And it is discouraging that what they've come up with is giving the ball to Gobert at the foul line, because I just think that if that
team's forcing them to do that,
if that is your product of your set play, then you're in trouble in the playoffs. Yeah. I mean, because set play execution or denial of execution is one of the most important indicators of who wins or loses a series. Yeah. And if you can take away what you regard as part of somebody's bread and butter, you have a big advantage. And
I mean, Britt, I think the operating assumption is, for me, is that's what is going to knock the Wolves out of the playoffs when they get knocked out of the playoffs. It could be different, and they could learn something here over the last quarter of the season, and they find some sort of rhythm with it. But if I just had to guess, or if I had to put a chip on a square on the roulette board of how this goes, I think this exactly what we're talking about, and we're fumbling to try and find an answer to, ends up being a big issue down the stretch of the season and cost them in the playoffs. And it leads to conversations in the offseason about, does this team really want to have that type of center at the 5, or do we find something in the Reed Randle front court and move into that? That I think is the most likely path of where this goes. It is not the only path. There is
right.
Does a different version of Randle that we've been talking about help some of this? Does the spacing of DiVincenzo help some of this? Has Ant gotten better at his involvement with Rudy? There's answers there, or there's ways that it could work. I just find it to be, for me, offensively, the operating assumption that it's a problem on offense, and it then becomes a question of how much is he making up for it on the defensive side of the floor. And to me, then that's matchup specific of, is it a defensive matchup where Rudy can be a game breaker, or is it Jokic and he's getting taken by him in the post and is not a dominant defensive player? It's about those two things. Can the defense be significantly greater, or can the sum of it be really be winning? Right. And he's a fascinating player in that way, where it's bifurcated.
And what is interesting to me of you saying that is, I agree with you that the place where his defense might be exploited is Denver without the Jokic guarder to replace him. On the other hand, I do think Denver doesn't have a lot of great personnel. Christian Brown, a potential exception of being able to break up that Rudy pick and roll thing. I think that the Lakers and the Rockets are much more likely to force Gobert out of the game or compromise the Wolves offense because of the personnel they have and the way they dig down. I mean, I was really impressed with what Redick has done with the Lakers. Finney Smith obviously is a huge addition, but they've got guys who want to get into you now. Vando's healthy. Vando and Finney Smith, I mean, talk about deadline acquisitions or whatever you want to talk about. One of the reasons they are winning as well as they're winning now is, one, they have the supreme confidence of having two superstars, but they also have these guys now that can get stops for you on the down low.
It's going to be, whenever it comes and whoever the playoff matchup is,
it's going to be a topic, right?
It's just going to be really interesting from a Wolves, how the Wolves are going to match up at every player. And I think it's going to, how I'm going to think about it is, what can Rudy do in this matchup?
Right.
Because I think there are some that he could be a real positive difference maker. And then there's the offensive matchups where if he isn't getting put in the positions that he needs to be an effective offensive player by his teammates, predominantly Ant, then it's gonna, it's gonna cost him. But we got this final quarter of the season. Like, this is an important time. It's talk about it, right? Of like, this is a really big story to me in terms of what the ceiling of this Timberwolves team is how Gobert is effectively integrated into a team that has evolved a little bit in his absence, and prior to his absence needed that evolution. Did the evolution come because he was out, or was it going to come anyways? I don't know the answers to that, and I think we only find that out in the final 18 games of the season once he returns.
And two factors I would throw in here. One is, when the trade was made, it was specifically said, I don't know whether it was Connolly or Finch, but one of the things we told Gobert, we assured him, is that we would not have him played off the floor.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. The other thing is, 7'1" back spasms, all bets are off.
Yeah. 32.
I mean, back spasms are no joke, and Gobert is the kind of player that gets rained on a lot, meaning that, people jump up in the air and come down on him a fair bit.
Sure.
And so both of those things are net negatives, in my view, because if Gobert, after getting played off the floor in the Olympics, gets played off the floor in the NBA playoffs, he's not going to be a happy camper. And he's just signed for 3 years at $90 million or whatever it is.
Finch will give him more opportunity to not be played off than
he will.
Vincent Collet did in France. I
Absolutely.
do.
Because Finch doesn't have Wemby.
Yeah, right. But just like in general, I think like it kind of goes to the patience of Finch thing, or seeing what is the most upside angle of this. Like I think we'll see a greater flexibility with Rudy from Finch, of minutes played, maybe not closing, which has always kind of been at
maybe quote unquote rest.
Yeah. Right. Oh yeah.
Seriously. I mean, like, Conley the other night, if you don't have Rudy, playing Mike Conley becomes a lot more fraught.
Yeah. No, it is Finch. Finch has a task cut out for him the rest of the season.
And what's funny is it's kind of a problem of his own making, because he has fashioned and his players, in conjunction with his coaching, has fashioned some really exciting options.
Sure.
I mean,
I think those options fit Finch as a coach better than
absolutely. At the same time, it's an organization, and they got a really high payroll, and where that payroll goes, it's, and also, where do you think, let's be honest with each other for a minute, even given all the things we've seen that have been positive in the month or so he's been out, where do the Timberwolves finish in the Western Conference with no Rudy Gobert on the team?
Well, I mean, when they were struggling offense in 2024, they were 20th on offense and 5th on defense, and they were 17 and 15 when the calendar turned. I mean, that's sub 500 without Rudy there for sure. I mean, would have been a lot worse.
I mean, again, we can nitpick this, and we should. I mean, I totally agree with you raising this issue and knowing that it is a really big problem. And your statement that, one of the more likely options for season-ending strategies is a team taking advantage of Gobert's weeknesses. On the other hand,
how all seasons end, right? It's the 21-20 or 21-22. It ended because they couldn't defensive rebound. What was the next year? I mean, when they lose to Denver, they were so injured, but they, couldn't effectively guard Jokic. And then in Dallas last year, it's they couldn't. They got exposed in pick and roll coverage due to their
and they got tired and overconfident. I mean, that was a character loss too. Right?
There's always things, right? There will be, if the Wolves don't win the championship, there will be a couple things that are at the top of the list of what didn't work, and I just, that to me is the leader in the clubhouse in terms of offense.
I think last year though, after they beat Denver, I know I expected them to beat Dallas in 5 or 6 games. I do not have any illusions about if they get to the Western Conference Finals, I'll be doing a jig and probably won't be making any more plane reservations. Let's put it that way. I mean, I think that, I mean, if you wind up as one of the top 2 teams in the West for the second year in a row with what you've done this year, all the turmoil and trouble, then Finch and Randle and everybody else deserves a bouquet, So again, I do think you're right that there'll be things we can point to, but one of the things we can point to is they lost to a better team.
Yes, right. That's a factor too. Well, we're up over 90 minutes. I haven't got a chance to read your mailbag yet, but what was cool from that, and why don't you just?
Well, I mean, I just, as usual, I spent like almost 3,000 words on 3 questions. So, the mailbag. I mean, I grouped the questions. So the first one is about McDaniels. Specifically, McDaniels is a big. I should have gotten more involved with that. They literally are running Rudy plays for him, and I didn't. I didn't make that causal thing because I'm not sure that sustains. But I do think
that was mostly before Randle got back.
Yeah, I know, but there was 2 plays the other night, and against Philly. It was either Philly or Charlotte. I mixed some of those games up because they both were against real patsies. But anyway, there's that, and then a spirited and lengthy defense of Mike Conley. Even though I've ripped his defense and fully acknowledge that his defense is problematical right now.
No, I can tell you dug into that. That was good. That was good. Oh.
Well, I mean, I just think that that every fan base needs a whipping person, somebody, and it was Randle for a long time, and now Randle's kind of played his way off the shit list. So Mike Conley's on the shit list, and I just feel like he deserves better, even though I've done my share of defecating. So, and so, that's the second one. And the third one is, are the kids going to play? What'll it be like? Who's going to do where? Will Gobert play? Will Conley play? And I pretty much said the safest bet is expect the status quo and see what happens. But I do think that Finch will be that the stakes are higher, his patience is thinner, and therefore changes on the margins are going to be more frequent.
Yeah. And I think that's, to me, that seems, I like the changes on the margins. I like the matchup.
Yep, exactly. I mean, there are definitely times when the game will scream Shannon, the game will scream Clark, the game will
scream neither of them.
Yeah. Or the game will scream, small ball or huge ball, Nas at the 3 or Jaden at the 3,
Right. Yeah. No, we didn't even to the Gobert reintegration part. We didn't even get to that's just adding another player to the rotation. 30 minutes.
That's crazy. Yeah. I mean, what's funny, and it's another thing I thought of when I was writing the column is McDaniels has evolved from wing stopper to skilled big. Yeah. And Finch loves skilled bigs. I mean, that's
I like that.
And so and he's playing like a skilled big. Mm-hmm. And so that's the good news, there's no shortage of skilled bigs on this team all of a sudden.
How fun has it just been from content, if you will, standpoint to like have had something different happening for a while. No longer the 8-man rotation and some
right
things,
and also have it be in the it's smaller sine waves, but there are Clark has risen and fallen and Shannon. I wish Shannon could finish. He's finishing too strong. He's afraid of getting his shot blocked. He almost never finishes too soft.
He's going to be your guy.
He's going
to be.
I love him. I mean, he's. I even think his 3, will become a little bit better. But I think his defense is untapped. It's not low hanging fruit, but it is ripening middle hanging fruit.
It is. You can tell that that he learned his path to playing this year was through that. Just the intention that he's bringing there. I think if he would have played in November, I don't think you would have seen that same.
Right.
I mean, that's just a theory. I don't know.
Did you see against Charlotte? He basically ran over and threw the ball off the opponent twice in like 5 minutes. He got possessions just on, sheer that whole, douchebag thing of you run and grab the ball and whip it at the opponent, just falling out of bounds.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, I do too.
All right, this is great, man. You guys can check out that mailbag over at MimPost from Britt. Next up with the show will be Monday with Jace. We won't be doing any episodes this weekend. Thanks for kind of rolling with me this week as I was returning from from being sick. Yeah, next week will be a big one, and we'll have a bunch of episodes. I'm going to Denver for that game, which is not very many games on the schedule. So I'm looking forward to one of the final highlighter games of the year there as well. So thanks for doing it, Britt.
Sure, my pleasure.
Until Monday with Jace. He's Britt. I'm Dane. Peace out.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Green and hot so you can find me in the crowd, yeah. Don't let standards ever bring you down, yeah.